Hi, I'm Amy Henderson, and I have a presentation about incorporating native plants into your home landscape. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Thanks for coming tonight to our program. This is going to be a really fun one. So my name is Elizabeth. I'm a librarian here at Leonardtown. Thank you again for coming. Our program tonight is gardening for butterflies and pollinator pathways. We have an amazing speaker, Amy Henderson. She's a great gardener, and she's going to talk to us about her projects that she's been doing for pollinator paths and also how you can make a nice garden for butterflies and pollinators in your yard. So the front yard is an initiative by the Friends of St. Clements Bay, and so they do a lot of hard work out there. They have a lot of community volunteers. If you want to volunteer and help with watering or weeding or anything else that they have to do out in the yard, it's a year-round project, and they keep that going for us. So if you want to volunteer with them, they are here tonight, or actually Friends isn't here tonight, but you can talk to Marlene with Wild Ones, and she can help you get set up to be a volunteer. So we also have Wild Ones Chesapeake Bay, another great local organization. They also work in our front yard. She's got a table set up in the back. We also have our St. Mary's County Gardening Club, and we have out in the hallway with the plants our friends from Earth Liaison. So I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Amy so she can give us this great presentation.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Amy.
you. All right, let's see. All right, Amy. Thank you. So, can you hear me? Oh my God. Hello. All right. Hi, I'm Amy Henderson. I've lived in Leonardtown for 35 years, and we've lived in our house now for about 23 years. And when we moved in, there were lots of planting beds, old trees. We put in a lot of things without knowing really what the impact would be. And come to find out a few years ago, as I started to learn more about the importance of native plants and supporting ecosystems for the local wildlife, it turns out that a lot of what we have are non-native invasives. And so you'll learn a little bit more about those, but my husband and I have been working hard to try to kind of turn our property into almost like a little wildlife refuge. We have bald eagles and hummingbirds and wild turkeys that entertain us. We have groundhogs, which aren't our favorites, but we have deer and everything in between. So it's been really fun to see, is it need to be closer? Okay. It's just been really fun to see all of the creatures that live around us. We have a lot of lizards that come around, and let's see, and butterflies. We're getting a lot more, and we started to see some monarchs, which is really fun. And yeah, so let me get started. And also, I just want to thank my friends who are here. I know Elizabeth mentioned that, but we gardeners are nice people, and we have a good time together, even though we get really dirty. Jessalyn is in the back. She's with Earth Liaison, and she can tell you about recommendations for plants. She can come to your house and give you advice on what to bring to your yard. Marlene Smith is the president of our Wild Ones Chesapeake Bay chapter, and she kind of is everywhere. And she knows about bees and butterflies and seedlings and everything in between. Bill is here. That's Bill Smith. He's our videographer. Marianne is in the back as representing St. Mary's County Garden Club. She also works in the front yard here at the library. How many people have visited the library garden? Oh, good. Okay, so you're familiar with what it is. We hope that you'll visit and get ideas of things that you can bring to your yard. And I just have to brag a little bit. My husband and I went year before last out to Winchester, Virginia. They have the Virginia State Arboretum, and they have a native plant garden within that arboretum. This garden right here is 10 times better than the state arboretum in Virginia, so just saying. I have a little prejudice, but it's pretty awesome what we have. So I'll just get started with our butterfly gardens and pollinator paths. I just thought of one other thing I wanted to say. Along with that garden, I've helped put in place a little native garden that's in Leonardtown. So if you've been to the Social restaurant, when you come out of Social, if you go around to the left, towards the New View Fiberworks. Between those two buildings is a little teeny park. They call it the Parkette. And there are now native plants in there. It used to be full of things that butterflies couldn't eat. And then we got permission to get rid of some of those things and bring in the new native plants. And so now I think butterflies are visiting downtown Leonardtown, and the hope is to create more of those types of spaces. So I have a quote here. So you can go, there we go. Doug Tallamy is well known in the native plant world. He's written a lot of books, and you can look him up online. There are many YouTube videos with presentations by him. And he has said, in the past, we have asked one thing of our gardens, that they be pretty. We all like pretty flowers, right? But now we need them to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, and manage water. So we need to go beyond just the pretty landscaping. And I just want to emphasize this idea that your yard and garden are connected to the greater ecosystem. Butterflies and bees and birds they don't care about fences or property lines or, town limits on a map. So what you plant and grow is going to impact what's happening in the greater ecosystem around you. So I'm here because I'm worried about what's happening to our ecosystems, and maybe you are too. There's just so much deterioration, and also the example that I think of is when I was a kid, and maybe some of you remember back in the 1900s, when you went for a ride in the car, by the time you got home, your windshield was splattered with bugs. Has that happened to you much lately?
No.
Isn't that weird? You don't really get that many. Your windshield is kind of clean. And there is this concept around the world of what scientists call the insect apocalypse. And that is that the insect populations are declining rapidly, and that's not a good thing. So I have a little quiz. Let's see. How many species of bees are native to the United States? Any ideas? All right, shout out a number over here. How many do you think there are?
20.
20, okay. I went over here. 5? There are 4,080 species of bees native to the United States. And they are actually super pollinators. You've probably heard of honeybees being taken. A lot of hives will be rented, and the hive owners will take them from farm to pollinate the plants. There are people who actually research this, and they sit in the field all day and watch and count and identify the bees. And they figured out that the native bees pollinate the plants like 150 times, like 150% better than the honeybees. Monarch butterfly populations, they're kind of the poster child for this movement. They've declined by, any idea? What percentage?
50.
It can be as much as 95% in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And then this goes along with the splattered windshield. A recent study shows a 75% decline in all flying insects in the last 25 years. And this last one is to kind of get us all thinking. The largest crop by acreage in the United States, and no local creatures benefit from it. Nothing can eat it.
Turf grass.
You've got it, turf grass. 40 million acres. It's the largest crop grown in our country. And it doesn't feed anything. It just makes us feel good that we have a gorgeous lawn. It looks like a golf course.
Makes us feel rich.
It does. And there's a lot
That's how it
of
started.
pressure, yes.
Wealthy people put in turf grass because it took a lot of people to maintain it.
That's right, and they didn't have to, their wealth, and they were rich enough, they didn't have to grow something that they could eat, right? The other thing I heard was that around 1960, when color TV came along, that people who watched golf on TV saw one of the Masters golf tournaments for the first time in color, and they said, whoa, I want my lawn to look like that. Let's see, alrighty. So the native plants in southern Maryland, or in any area, are the ones that have evolved in this area, and they evolved alongside the insects and birds and other creatures in this area. And so they're considered to be indigenous to the Chesapeake Bay area at the time of European settlement. And why should we plant native plants? They tend to be more resilient and hardy in the ecosystem. They don't need a lot of fertilizer. Once they're established, they generally use less water and they don't need pesticides. In fact, we want the insects to eat our plants. That means that it's a healthy ecosystem, right? It all keeps going. And they supply habitat for the insects and other creatures. And what's the last one? Thanks. Promote biodiversity and provide beauty with a purpose, like that first slide said. I've got it here. I'm going to do a quick, I have not studied this in depth, but I have read an article recently that talked about the terrific increase in cases of Lyme disease and the prevalence of ticks in our landscapes. And somebody has noticed that this increase has come with the increase or prevalence of our very, very groomed yards, turf grass, non-native shrubs and flowers. And so then the only animals that can thrive in that environment are the ones that are the best hosts for the ticks, the mice, the deer, and maybe some birds. And so when we bring the native plants in, so that yard, that pristine yard, there's no biodiversity. See what I mean? When we bring in our native plants, then that invites more insects, more different types of animals, and then the ticks have some competition. So then they're not as prevalent. So it's an interesting thing to think about. You can look that one up. But biodiversity, that is having a lot of different kinds of plants and animals in the environment, is really better for everybody. Where are we going next? A host plant is this specific plant. The monarchs are kind of our poster child. Let me go back here. Pollinators are any insect or animal that transfers pollen from one plant to another and thereby facilitates fertilization to form fruits or seeds. Pollinators can include butterflies, bees, beetles, wasps, moths, flies, ants, birds, even lizards, and bats sometimes are all types of pollinators. And then host plants, those are the ones that provide food for many, many types of animals, well, or a type. They have a relationship. So host plants versus the non-natives. For instance, our native oak trees host several hundred types of insects. They provide food for many, many types of caterpillars, and caterpillars are baby moths and butterflies. So crepe myrtles, which are so prevalent around here, I have a few, they host 0. So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. The monarch butterfly is the poster child for this whole insect-host-plant relationship, and they are interesting because they migrate. Some of them, not all monarchs migrate, but some of them migrate thousands of miles in the fall down south, and then they migrate back thousands of miles. They're incredible. And the only thing that their caterpillars will eat is milkweed. They're very, very picky eaters. And I remember, again, back in the 1900s when I was a kid, we would see this milkweed fluff floating on the breeze. And you really don't see that very often anymore because we've cleared that landscape and gotten rid of those weeds, right? That name that's not a good name. And there are similar relationships between other animals and plants around the world. All right, this is one of my favorite object lessons, if you will. So the idea that caterpillars are baby food. This is our typical chickadee, and there's the chickadee parent bird, and a mom or dad, I'm not sure which, bringing a tasty caterpillar, and here are the babies. Down on the bottom left, that would be the hatchlings that just emerged from their eggs, and then here we've got the fledglings that are getting ready to fly out of the nest. So 98% of birds feed caterpillars or insects to their babies. If you think about it, the caterpillars are soft, and they're really nutritious and high in protein, so they help those babies grow. And within 2 or 3 weeks from the time they hatch to when they get their feathers, just how many caterpillars do you think those chickadee parents have to bring to the nest?
Hundreds.
A lot, right? Again, people have counted 6,000 to 9,000. So if all you have in your yard are non-native shrubs and trees, crepe myrtles, Asian maples, barberry, nandina, there aren't going to be any caterpillars on those plants, and then there won't be any food for those baby birds. So now we're going to get into food deserts and habitat fragmentation and pesticides, non-native invasive species. Oh my. Alrighty. I'll show you a couple of ideas. So when you look at this picture, this is a very typical landscape presentation in our area. Lots of mulch. None of these plants are native to this area. They're not going to feed much. Similarly, I think that's at our post office. This is in a neighborhood nearby. All of the plants in that bed are non-native. The purplish bushes in the center are considered to be non-native invasives. I think that's barberry. And in the back are the nandina, also non-native and can be an invasive, larabi and roses. And it's now to my eye, you know, that I used to drive by things like that and not really give it much thought. Now I look at it and think, there's nothing for the birds there. And then there's that lawn. So my husband was a little curious when I came home with all of these foods. So the typical bee can fly about almost half a mile, 4/10 of a mile. So it's range. So let's say each of these hoops is that range of how far the bee can fly. So before we came in and started digging everything up and putting in houses and roads and office buildings and whatnot, there was this corridor, if you will. There was an ecosystem that the bee could fly across its range, and then it could find food, so then it could go to the next and the next. But suppose somebody comes in and builds a neighborhood. So now that's gone. And then over here, we've got a shopping center. So now that part of the range is gone. And maybe here, even our farms are people using lots of pesticides. Now we don't have a corridor anymore. And how are those bees going to get from place to place and find the food that they need? And that's called fragmentation. So that breaking up of the ecosystem makes it so that those animals really can't survive anymore. There's no place for them to eat, there's no shelter, probably no water. So what we're trying to do now, thanks to you all coming tonight, and the efforts of gardeners across the country, hopefully, and in our neighborhoods, is to defragment and start planting things that will benefit those insects and those birds and those creatures, so that we can have a continuous corridor again. So here's where I can start preaching. Let's see, I'm going to go back to here. The other thing is that, you know, a lot of people will say, well, we've got our national parks, we have our state parks. You know, the bees and the butterflies and birds can live in those. But again, how far apart are those? Right? I mean, they're like hundreds, thousands of miles apart. Again, we've got these big gaps that are filled in with our neighborhoods and office buildings and shopping centers. And then, along with insecticides and habitat fragmentation, the introduction of non-native and invasive plants, which can dominate new environments, has also hurt the insects. Because many insects have evolved to feed on or fertilize a narrow range of plant species, the disruption of the plant world can have an outsized effect. You've probably driven down Highway 95 and seen kudzu. Those are those big vines that they just cover all the trees, and eventually they can pull those trees down and they take up all the space so nothing else can grow. And then you've got this fragmented ecosystem again. Bamboo is another one. I got to visit Hawaii about 20 years ago, and there are whole hillsides, acres and acres and acres, that are just bamboo. They've pushed out all of the other native species that are in that ecosystem. Bradford or Calgary pears. If you've driven to Washington, D.C. in late April, you'll see those white trees on either side of the highway going up there to D.C. Those again, invasive, non-native, nothing can eat them, and they will proliferate and push out the other beneficial trees and plants. We, in our yard, have a lot of those, and we were trying to get rid of them. Vinca vines, the nice green ground cover, yeah, they don't feed anything. Jerusalem olive, we had that one. English ivy, Chuck was just telling me he has a lot of English ivy in his yard, and they will take down trees and take over a whole landscape. Nandina is another one, that's a relative of bamboo. Laribe will spread. And we've had to spend a lot of effort to try to get rid of some of those. So, 1 yard at a time. I keep saying I'm saving the world, one native plant, 1 yard at a time. Our hope is that the butterfly trail will defragment our local environment, and it will benefit our ecosystem as a whole. Each of our yards and gardens can be part of the solution to the problems that are associated with fragmentation. If we begin to manage our own yards organically and with native plantings, they will connect the ecosystem and then begin to connect parks and preserves, creating crucial corridors for wildlife. And so that's the idea behind the butterfly trail. The goal is to connect properties that are no farther apart than 4/10 of a mile throughout Leonardtown and throughout the county, and then we can create a corridor of habitat for the creatures that depend on it. And so I just was imagining, if we start here at the library garden and then work our way down to the wharf, there are little pockets of native habitat popping up. We've got our parkette next to the Arts Council office. They've got a little space that's got native plants in it. CSM has a little native plant area for the bees. And so I'm here to encourage you to seek out native plant alternatives for some of the popular and at times non-native invasive plants, to see that native plants can achieve the same aesthetic goals as non-natives. You want a pretty yard? Guess what? You can do it with natives. And to consider using native plants when replacing damaged or dying plants, when you're planting a new garden or bed, and when problem solving, for instance, managing a wet area in your yard. Your plants can do a lot of work for you. Now, some people get very nervous when we talk about putting native plants in our yards, and they think this is what we're going to get. This is not what I am a proponent of. It's not about just letting your yard go. And in fact, a lot of times when we do let our yards go like this, it's a lot of non-native weeds anyway, and it's not going to really benefit the ecosystem. So let's look at what we can do. Think about where you can include native plants. They will thrive where other things won't. So on the left is actually my friend Mary Ann's. It's next to the, you can't see the stairs very well, but it's next to that railing. It's near where the hose reel is. They're not going to mow in there. But instead of just pulling weeds all the time, install some native plants. They can fill in and take over, and ta-da, you've got a win-win. And then on the right, that is the Grossman's house. And Jesselyn, who's in the green shirt in the back, She designed and installed that for them. Again, that's sort of a meh, you know, oh, it's where the electric box, the electric meter is. That's not a fun part of the yard, but you can make it fun by putting in those beautiful plants that will also work hard for the ecosystem. Okay, this one is Mary Ann's yard. This was in the front here by the curb. This was installed by the Eco Bay Landscape Company. And Mary Ann had a couple things going on. One is she wanted to incorporate native plants. Then also they wanted to have some turf grass. And when they watered it, the water would often drain down into the street. And so they created this bed that would hold the native, that would have the native plants that would then hold that water and keep the water from running down into the street. I am not an expert on rain gardens, as they're called, but that if you have a place in your yard that tends to be soggy, there are plants that can be used to remedy that. And I've heard stories of people who had, you know, like a leaky basement, and they tried and tried to resolve it, and when they finally incorporated these good natives into their landscape, the plants could take up that water and it solved their basement problem. So I'm not making any promises, but if you talk to the right people, they can help you find those plants that will do that work for you. And here we go. And then also, most of us have some flower beds in our yards already. You don't have to start something new. Use your existing flower beds and put some native plants in there. The top left, that's at a place called Mount Cuba. I think I've got a picture, another picture from that, but that's up in Delaware, and that's an old estate, and it has a lot of formal gardens, and almost all their plants are native. The one on the right, that's yellow, that's in the front flower bed at my house, and then the one down here on the bottom left, that is in front of the extension office in Leonardtown. And so they've incorporated natives. Under the tree, that is at the parkette, and there are a lot of plants that do really well in the shade, and that's a lovely way to incorporate natives into your yard. If you have a tree, stop making mulch volcanoes around the trunk. Give those roots a little bit of room to breathe, and then incorporate those natives, and they will help hold the soil. You'll water the natives, which will water the tree at the same time, and it'll be good for everybody. And then you can also have a pot on your balcony. If you live in a small place and you don't have a yard, you can still put some natives on your deck. Alrighty, so this is going to be the long one. I don't have a lot of visuals for this. But let's see. When you get started, and this one slide could be a whole presentation. But there's so much information on the internet. Marlene has a ton of things in the back at her display for wild ones. The first thing you're going to do is just look at your yard. Notice where the sun comes up. How long is it sunny in the spot that you want to put plants in? Is it predominantly shady? Full sun is more than 6 hours of direct sun a day. 4 to 6 hours of direct sun, depending on the time of day, it's part sun or part shade. And then full shade is less than 4 hours of direct sun per day. Now is a good time to prepare your new bed if you're going to do something new. I would not recommend actually planting right now. It's just hot and dry. You can, but you're going to really have to pay attention to those plants. And I would not plant littles. You're going to want something that's fairly hefty. Do my gardening expert friends agree? Like, now is not the best time to put plants in the ground. But it is the time when some of the garden centers will have things that are flowering so you can see what they look like. Just be prepared to keep it watered if you do put some things in now. The way that I prepare beds takes about 3 months. And if you're going to kill grass, you'll need that time. And then the fall is a great time to put plants in, because that's when things start to kind of settle down. Obviously the weather's cooler, usually wetter. We usually get more rain in the fall. And then they can kind of settle in and get the roots going, and then in the spring come roaring back. So what we have done, and a lot of the experts online recommend just starting small. They'll say do a 5 foot by 5 foot square and cover it with cardboard. Now we have not stayed that small. In fact, you will find the Hendersons dumpster diving at Ace Hardware because the cardboard is a great resource. It's usually clean. We try to take the tape off and avoid the staples and things like that. But we spread that cardboard out, and then it's on the grassy area where we want to put our native plants later. And we put a heavy layer of mulch on top of that, and then we wait. And in about 3 months, that grass underneath is dead, and we can start sticking our plants in. And then while you're waiting for the grass to die, you can research the native plants, you can figure out which ones you'd like to incorporate. You can visit native gardens, talk to friends who know about native plants, and visit the web pages. Wild Ones has a part of their webpage has a free native plant landscape designs, and there'll be one. I think there's one for Washington, D.C., which is close to us. We are considered coastal plain. We could get into a lot of picky details. As much as possible, you want to choose plants that are originally native to this area. Do the best you can. That can be a challenge. But go on that Wild Ones webpage, and I'm going to put a plug in. Join Wild Ones. There is so much great information. Every other month there's an online Zoom meeting and special guest speakers. There are videos on the website. Lots of good information. In late September or early October, you can dig your holes and plant plugs, which are the little plants. You may have seen Butterfly Alley. Has anybody seen that? Out on Hollywood Road. And you can go to her website. Carrie is the owner, and she will put a list up of what's available, what she will have available in early October, and you can place an order by sending her an email and getting those plugs. As much as possible, avoid things that have been treated with pesticides. And there's one type called neonicotinoids or neonics. That's a systemic pesticide, and every part of the plant will be poisonous and will kill anything that eats it, even the pollen. So I forget to ask. So far I've been lucky, but Becky, you have been really on that. Have you known of people that sell neonic treated plants around here?
I haven't kept up with who is actually doing it still.
Mm-hmm.
I
Big
think
box
at the state
stores
level, they're
do
trying
it.
to get rid of it, or they have succeeded in that. Someone in the audience might know more.
I know, is it Bernie?
Yeah, right. Big box stores, especially their milkweed,
Is treated?
is treated, and you'll see dead caterpillars.
The caterpillars eat it and they die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beware, sorry Liz, but yeah, beware of those plants. And then also there's, I get a little militant sometimes, but start to ask for natives at the nurseries. I think and I know Wentworth's is aware of natives. They actually supplied some of the plants for the front yard garden here, and I've been there. My husband and I have gotten a couple of trees there, and we've said specifically we want native trees. And so if you are asking for the natives and hunting for those and letting them know that's what you're looking for, I think they're going to start to pay more attention. The Mennonite garden centers also sell a lot of different things, a lot of non-natives, and they are incorporating more natives as they go along. And then just stop buying the invasive plants. Like, it's so sad, but still in Maryland, you can buy English ivy and liribe and nandina and vinca and Bradford pears. Just don't buy those. And then try to obtain your plants from places that are as close to home as possible, and that's just good for the whole genetic evolution, ecosystem part. Sleep, creep, leap. That's just a saying that we use, that you put those little plugs in the ground in the fall, they kind of sleep and settle in, the roots get a chance to get fixed, and then the next season they will creep and start getting bigger. We watch that here in this garden. The first year, you know, they were nice, and now they are leaping. They are huge and really making their personalities known. It's pretty wonderful. And if you're not a do-it-yourselfer, we have people like Jessalyn of Earth Liaison. We have people like Eco Bay Landscape, and they will do it for you. And we've done a little bit of that. We've hired some advice, installation, all the different pieces, if you're not up to doing it all on your own. All right, I think this next one is just a review. When you're getting going, you will have to tend to these plants. You've got to water consistently to help them get established. Remove the, it's funny because we joke a little bit because everything in there is a weed, or the name is weed, but the names aren't really accurate. Anyway, those, I call them undesirables. Get rid of those undesirables as fast as you can. Let nature lead. You'll notice in this garden that there are a lot of seed heads that are still on the plants. And another key to a healthy ecosystem and healthy gardens is to leave the leaves. As those plants start to die back and the trees start to lose their leaves, bring them into your garden beds. Let it be like natural mulch. That's where a lot of baby insects overwinter. If you want to see fireflies in your yard, leave the leaves. That's where the firefly larvae live, is in that detritus duff that the leaves create. And then also just, you know, you're going to get to know your plants. They're your friends. So you want to label them and see what's happening in which place, what kind of care they seem to need, which ones are sort of needy, which ones are tough, and you can just sort of ignore them. Yeah, it's pretty fun actually. Alrighty, so this is a fun one. Cues to care. This comes from this place that I mentioned called Mount Cuba, and their logo is on your handout. This is an old estate in Delaware. They were DuPont relatives, and it's been turned into this native plant demonstration garden. They also have a research garden where they'll take different varieties of the same plant, so the same genus, and then and see which ones seem to be the most popular with the pollinators. It's pretty cool. But they talk about cues to care, and that's how the neighbors will still be your friends. And one person that I like to follow, who's an ecological landscaper, she calls it the mullet method. That's business in front, party in back. So you can see here, this is at my friend's house in my neighborhood. This is one that Jessalyn at Earth Liaison installed. And you can see it's got that nice edge with the mowed lawn in front. She's got her planter on one side, and it just says, somebody lives here, somebody cares about this place, right? This is from the front yard garden. We've got a brick edge. Again, it just shows people that there's a delineation. My husband is a big proponent of these. Gotta have your edges. This is at Mount Cuba, and you can see there's that lovely home and the brick sidewalk next to it. And all those plants are native plants. And this one, that's at my house, and that rock wall again gives it makes it official. And then I want to point out the sign. My friend got that from the National Wildlife Federation, and it's just a little sign that says, it's sort of hard to see it among the plants, but it just says, this garden was planted with the wildlife in mind. And there are lots of different kinds of signs. I know Marianne got some wild ones. I think they have a sign too. You have to sign up and get certified, but yeah. And this is just an example of a place that I saw online. There's a law in Maryland that is called House Bill 322, and it prohibits homeowners associations, governing bodies from imposing undue restrictions on homeowners for employing environmentally friendly landscaping techniques. These techniques create wildlife habitat, conserve water, prevent runoff, and provide pollution prevention. And so, your homeowners association really can't come after you if you're doing it right. Some of them have rules about, your lawn, your grass can't be over a certain height, or your plants can't be taller than such and such, but that's really not a thing. In this case, however, this yard, things were spilling over the curb. The city actually came after them and said, gotta clean it up, guys, even though you have a sign. And so this is their mullet method, right? They've got this clean, tidy, mulched bed with the native grasses, and then their wilder stuff is in the back. So business in front, party in the back. This is so much text. I just suggest you get scientific and start to learn. As you get to know the plants and use them, plant them, get familiar with them, you'll start to call them by their genus and species more often than the more common names. There's milkweed, and then there's milkweed, and then there's milkweed. So if you know if it's Asclepias tuberosa versus some of the others, you'll know what you're talking about. Straight species, that is the naturally occurring original native plant. Typically is superior for the habitat. The cultivars, when you have ones that are kind of a one-off that's been bred specifically for a certain trait, maybe a color or shape of flower or a height, then those are all going to be the same. They're clones. And I use cultivars. I have echinacea that is all different colors. It's not all just purple. And that's something, boy, when you get online and start reading, there are so many different opinions about that. Some people are very devoted to their straight species only. And sometimes they're hard to find. So again, I say do the best you can. One thing to be aware of is that if it's a drastic change to the plant, like I've seen, if I've got a picture of an echinacea in here somewhere, but it looks like a tall daisy, and Jessalyn has some outside. It's a purple, kind of a daisy shape. It's got a large center. The bees and butterflies love it, and then when the flower is done, the goldfinches eat the seeds. They're fantastic. But I saw an echinacea that looked like a carnation. A friend of mine had one, and she's like, oh, look at this. This is so... I'm like, nice. Except the bees and the butterflies can't get their tongues down in there to reach the pollen or the nectar to get any food. So try to avoid the things that are really a huge deviation from the flower shape and size. And then again, just avoid those invasive species, those ones that are causing so much trouble. And then a fun thing to do is just to learn to recognize the plants and knowing whether they're native, how they grow, how big they get. I use the one on the left that's an app on my phone, and my friends and I nerd out. We found this plant out by the street, and we're all like taking pictures and is it native? I'll introduce you to that plant. And then it will show you, like on this map, it'll show if it's green, that bright green means it's native to that part of the world. And that's what you're looking for. So this is my newest friend. This is a Carolina petunia, and what is her scientific name? I don't remember. Ruellia. I think she's a Ruellia. And there's what came up on my Plant ID app. It was out by the street next to the curb. And I thought, oh, that's a pretty flower. I did the Plant ID, found out the name of it, and ta-da! It's native to this area. And since it was on my property, I felt fine to dig it up and bring it into my garden. And it's happy, I love it. And then it says it attracts beneficial pollinators, so woohoo! It's got all the features. I've read that it's not legal to dig up plants when they're not on your property. So don't be going into the woods and trying to bring things home. A lot of plants need specific conditions where they grow naturally that you can't replicate at home. So, share with your neighbors. There are a lot of things like bee balm and mint and even echinacea that you can get from them with permission. And also, it's really not legal to go spreading seeds. I know there are some people who like to do that and try to naturalize things, but it's not a good idea. Kind of quickly, I wanted to go through these. The Bradford pear on the left. This is just to give you an idea of some of the things that are available that have a similar shape, size, color, features. So if you're looking for something that's similar to a Bradford pear, try to find the hawthorns. In fact, Wentworth sells hawthorns. Another one, burning bush, is popular around here. You see that planted everywhere. That is also non-native. Virginia sweet spire, Itea. And the cultivar, this one is called Henry's Garnet. We have some of these out in the library garden. And it turns out pretty red in the fall, and it gets cool flowers in the spring. So it's way better than the non-native. Another favorite of mine, instead of planting English boxwood, which is very fussy, I think it gets some fungus, it has problems. It gets issues. And there are different pests that are attracted to it, and then people want to put a lot of pesticides on them, and it's just bad for the ecosystem. But the inkberry holly looks almost exactly alike, and it gets berries, so it's good for food for the birds.
Just put some in.
Did you put some inkberries in?
Yeah, two females and a male.
Oh, good job. Okay, that's one that you have to have a boy and a girl to get your berries. Another one. So laribe, it's also called lily turf or monkey grass. We have had a lot of that at our house. In fact, that picture on the left is from our house. And now we're trying to get rid of it. This blue-eyed grass is a champ. I had never heard of it until I started working in the library garden. And boy, it's beautiful and tough. It gets those little blue flowers. It's just fantastic. Or if you want something that will fill in even more dry shade, is sedges. The genus is Carex. And that's just that slim, grassy looking stuff. And boy, when it gets going, it'll spread all over the place. And you don't have to mow it. It can save time, fuel, all of it. And then this one, chrysanthemums. Everybody loves their chrysanthemums. Well, they're non-native. So plant some of those maybe, but then include, you can't really see that word, I'm sorry, New England aster, Symphyotrichum novae angliae. Anyway, purple flowers. You can trim, if you want that fall bloom, like the chrysanthemums, you can trim them back now, and then that bloom will come later. We have some blooming in the garden now. So a little wrap up here, your garden's mission. And that's echinacea. That's a purple coneflower. Conserve water, reduce pesticides and fertilizers, save time. My husband has stopped mowing some of the areas in our yard, and I'm trying to work in some native plants to get some meadow action going. They prevent flooding and soil erosion. That's a whole other topic we could talk about. The native grasses, your turf grass, the roots grow 3 inches, 4 inches deep. Native grasses go 8 to 10 feet. So if you've got a bank that you're trying to stop erosion, those native grasses will do the job. Of course, attracting the pollinators, like we've talked about, discouraging invasive species, providing food and shelter, and encouraging biodiversity. So this is the invitation for you to become part of the Butterfly Trail. We're hoping, there's a group of us that have been working on this concept, and we hope to come up with some kind of a little sign that when you start to install native plants in your yard, you can get a little sign that indicates you're part of the team. And I borrowed Carrie's motto from Butterfly Alley, success is measured in butterflies. My hope is that as you do this, that you will start to see more of these beautiful creatures. We see butterflies and bees constantly in our yard now. And that picture along the bottom with the monarchs is from our yard last summer. I was totally nerding out because they were just hanging around all those flowers, and I took a bunch of pictures, and I was just thrilled. The sign on the right is from the parquet that Becky designed, just to remind people that the butterflies are around and we're trying to help them. So yeah, more than just being pretty. And finally, these are what you have on your handout. Highly recommend. There's so much information now, like I've said. Each of these has information that will help you as you try to become part of the butterfly trail. And that's all I have. Do you have? I hope you enjoyed the presentation. There's a lot more information on the internet. Visit Wild Ones Chesapeake Bay to get more information about our local ecosystems and the plants that are the best for our area. And I hope you enjoy your native plant gardening journey.